A few months ago, I went back and rewatched the entire Netflix Defenders era of Marvel television. And the one thing I could not help but notice during this watch through is how the Netflix Defenders universe feels just so incredibly organically connected. Sure, the shows crossed over. There were the big moments, like the entire Defenders series, where the characters eventually came together.
No.
What are you talking about? Bulletproof. Blind ninja. Whatever it is you are.
Classy.
But more importantly, the world itself already felt deeply interwoven before the big crossover ever happened. And I think that's what made this era work so well. Now, let's clarify one thing up front. When I say the Netflix Defenders era, I'm not only talking about the Defenders series. I'm talking about the entire shared universe. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Punisher, and yes, of course, the Defenders. With that established, the first aspect worth noting in this is the Defenders universe has one major advantage: scale. Most of these stories were contained within a single borough of the Big Apple. New York City, right? Manhattan. Hell's Kitchen, Harlem, Chinatown are all in Manhattan. And if you've ever experienced time in the Big Apple, then you'll know that NYC is not as big as it can feel. So proximity was always working in favor of the shared universe. The places felt close enough that it made sense for characters, criminals, lawyers, nurses, reporters, and organizations to naturally overlap. Now, let's be clear about one thing. That doesn't mean larger universes can't have incredible continuity. They absolutely can. But the larger a universe becomes, the more complexity is introduced. And with that comes an immense amount of coordination. The Defenders didn't constantly have to explain why someone was nearby. The world was small enough that the overlaps felt natural. They felt intuitive. And now that is where this universe really fucking works for me, because the continuity follows logic. In other words, whether it's a crossover or just a quick cameo, it happens because it makes sense within the world. Jerry Hogarth being Danny Rand's lawyer makes sense because we already know who Jerry is. She's an established, high-powered attorney. So when Danny returns and needs serious legal help, her involvement doesn't feel forced. Foggy working for Hogarth makes sense too. His career was already moving in that direction. So when he shows up in Jessica Jones, it doesn't feel like a random cameo. It feels like Foggy's just continuing to live his life. Same thing with Turk. And can I just say for a second, Turk was the fucking best character. Turk showing up throughout different parts of the city within different shows works because he's a street-level criminal. Of course he's moving around New York looking for work, opportunities, or simply just trying to survive before Daredevil beats the shit out of him again. These appearances don't need a huge explanation because they already make sense. And I think that's the key. The continuity doesn't stop the story to announce itself. Instead, the universe constantly, but subtly, reminds you it's connected without demanding all of your attention. A prime example is Season 1, Episode 6 of Luke Cage.
Just joining us, this is Trish Talk, and we are discussing the recent events that have the residents of Harlem confused and some even frightened. Line 1, Sophia, you're on the air.
Luke Cage is turning the neighborhood upside down and giving it a good shake. Trust me, no one wants to see what falls out.
The episode opens with Trish on Trish Talk. She mentions the work Luke Cage is doing. It's such a small but potent detail, a little hint to Jessica Jones, and it reminds you these stories are happening in the same world. Luke is active in Harlem, and Trish is talking about it. The city is noticing, and it's responding. The New York Bulletin works in a similar way. It gives the world texture. It lets information travel. It bridges one story to the next, constantly reminding you that these stories are unfolding within the same continuity. The city remembers what's happening in the other shows. And that's the kind of continuity that I appreciate the most. Not continuity as fan service just for the sake of fan service. Continuity that works because it's baked into the environment. The Defenders universe also did an exceptional job of laying the groundwork before the next crossover or cameo ever happened. So when those moments finally arrived, they didn't need an explanation to set them up. Karen Page showing up for Frank Castle in The Punisher Season 2 works because their relationship was already built in Daredevil. Claire Temple moving between shows works because she's a nurse in Hell's Kitchen. She could naturally cross paths with Daredevil and Jessica Jones. She wants to learn how to fight, so she ends up at Colleen's dojo. Her family lives in Harlem. None of these connections feel like a stretch. They feel like someone's life naturally unfolding. The Hand works the same way. They weren't introduced right before the Defenders series because the writers suddenly needed a common villain. They were already embedded in the world, so when these pieces finally come together, it doesn't feel like the writers are forcing a connection. It feels like the connection was already there. And I think supporting characters are a huge reason this universe feels lived in. Continuity isn't carried only by the heroes here. It's carried by everyone around them. Claire, my man Turk, Jerry, Foggy, Karen, these characters continue living their lives, even when they aren't the center of the story. And that matters, because a shared universe doesn't feel real just because the main heroes meet. It feels real when the supporting cast also has lives. They have jobs, they have relationships, there's consequences that continue beyond a singular show. And all of this is why the Defenders era really stands out to me. Its continuity felt organic. It rarely needed a spectacle. It didn't need every cameo or every connection to become this huge event. Most of the time, the continuity was subtle. So subtle that you almost stopped noticing it was there. But it was constantly shaping the world around the characters. A character appeared because it made sense. A name came up because people in the city were talking. A lawyer represented someone because that was literally their job. A criminal showed up somewhere else because criminals, they move around. They do their thing. And all of that made the world feel naturally connected. The writers never had to rub our faces in it. The world simply behaved like it was connected. And maybe that's part of the reason why Marvel Studios decided to bring so much of it forward into Daredevil Born Again and whatever comes in Season 3. To me, though, that's why the Netflix Defenders universe still really stands out as one of the best examples of shared universe continuity.